Hello and welcome to the Wisdom of the Akasha podcast. My name is Susie and I am an Akashic Records teacher. I also do one-on-one sessions for people reading their Akashic Records and also doing energy work in the Akashic Records known as clearing. This is episode 1 of my new podcast, and I just wanted to first set my intentions in respect of what I want to do with this podcast. A lot of the topics I discuss on social media are quite like high level, quite esoteric, and they often require a little bit of a deeper dive and a bit of a more nuanced conversation around them. So, my intention with the podcast is for me to be able to provide a space to discuss things in depth, to maybe have a bit more of a nuanced conversation around these esoteric topics, and of course, help guide you on your own spiritual journey. The spiritual awakening process and the spiritual development journey can be a really tough, difficult time. And now we live in an age where there is so much access to different perspectives and different information, different paths, different practices, that it can be very, very overwhelming. So, my other intention with this podcast is to be able to help you work out which path and practice is best suited for you. There is no such thing as one path for all. And I really want to give you the opportunity to feel into what resonates for you. You're going to hear me talk a lot about resonance in this podcast and your internal navigation system, because these truly are your best guide in your own spiritual journey. I'm constantly learning in the Akashic Records. So, whilst I do teach people how to access their own Akashic Record and how to read for others, I learn every single day, every time I teach, every time I do a reading. And I am really excited to share with you all the things I have learned along my way and that I will continue to learn. With this first episode, I really wanted to cover the basics about what the Akashic Records are and what the Akashic Records are not. The word Akasha is a Sanskrit word, and as with lots of the Sanskrit words, it has multiple potential translation. Most people will translate Akasha to mean either space, sky, or ether. Now, the term Akashic Records first shows up in a book called Esoteric Buddhism, which was written by one of the members of the Theosophical Society. So you may have seen reference to the term Akasha in the Vedic traditions, but the Akashic Records as a concept was really coined by the Theosophists in the late 1800s, early 1900s. You'll see reference to this field of consciousness, this field of information that's available in lots of different traditions, lots of different ways. The Bible would refer to what's called the Book of Life. And this idea has been around, but it was the Theosophists who actually coined the term the Akashic Records. I like to define the Akashic Records as being your soul's energetic memory since it left source. So all souls come from source. Essentially, the soul is an individualized fractal of source consciousness. And your Akashic Records are the memory of that journey of all experiences, all emotions, all thoughts that your soul has experienced. Or perhaps an easier way to think of it is that the Akashic Records are essentially the equivalent of your soul's cloud storage facility. So I will often say to people when they ask about questions to ask the Akashic Records, think of being able to type into Google a question, but it be about your soul. That's what you're doing when you're accessing the Akashic Record. You're asking questions in respect of the soul and its journey and its experience. One of the common misconceptions that I see a lot on social media is this idea that the Akashic Records are an energetic library which exists only in the fifth dimension. And This is incorrect and actually can be quite problematic for a couple of reasons from my own personal perspective. So, number one, the Akashic Records exist over multiple dimensions. I go into this in detail in my level 1 class, but basically, you're a multidimensional being. Your soul is multidimensional, and the Akashic Records are also multidimensional. So, having a belief that the Akashic Records only exists in one dimension is going to limit your own personal experience with the Akashic Records, and therefore it's going to limit the amount of information and perhaps healing energies that you're going to receive when you're in the Akashic Records. I completely understand where this analogy of this library and this book of life has come from. The life concept obviously comes from the Bible and was really popularized by an amazing Akashic Records reader called Edgar Cayce back in the early 1900s. And he was a devout Christian. So the terminology that he was going to use was going to obviously be flavored essentially by his own personal beliefs and his belief system that he was familiar with. The library analogy is really helpful for our human brain. Our human brain likes to think of things in a linear fashion, in a way that it can visualize. So the analogy of the library isn't problematic in the sense that it helps us to understand the concept of the Akashic Records. Where the library analogy becomes problematic is when people who maybe haven't got the level of experience in meditation will try to access the Akashic Records via meditation without guidance, without really knowing what they're doing. And they will come across what I call the fake Akashic Records, of which there are multiple versions of in the astral realm. People will reach out to me all the time on social media and say, Susie, I did this meditation that I found. I went to the Akashic Records and the guides there were really rude to me, or they were unhelpful. And I know instantly that what has happened is they have visited one of the many fake versions in the astral realm, because when you truly go to the Akashic Records, all you are going to experience is complete unconditional love and support from your guide team who are there within your Akashic Records. The Akashic Records exist in the spiritual realm rather than the astral realm. And you can, of course, access the Akashic Records via meditation, but you need to be an experienced meditator or have guidance in respect of where you're going, because essentially you go through the astral realm into the spiritual realm via meditation. Whilst the Akashic Records does hold all of this amazing information and you have the potential to receive amazing guidance from your guide team in the Akashic Records, your intention for going to the Akashic Records is not to be told what to do. Okay, we always must remember that we have free will and that no true guides are going to ever come in and try to impede upon your free will. As a side note, if you ever do have a guide or guides that you connect into in your meditations whilst you're in the astral realm, and they tell you what to do, feel free to disconnect from them, because they are not guides of the light, and it's guides of the light that you do want to connect to. Guides of the light will always honor and respect your ability to make your own decisions. So whilst they will give guidance, whilst they will help you see things from different perspectives, try to kind of point you in the right direction, they will not tell you what to do. Think of the Akashic Records as this huge repository of information that you're able to tap into and receive guidance from in respect of anything that your soul really wants to know and really wants guidance on. There's also the misconception out there that Akashic Records are just about past lives, or that the Akashic Records are the same as past life regression. Whilst the Akashic Records do have past life information in them, it's more about getting information in respect of past lives to help you in your current incarnation. So, for example, you may have acquired certain gifts, skills, and talents in a previous incarnation that are available to you in this incarnation to help you with your soul's mission or purpose in this current incarnation. But the Akashic Records are not just about past lives. The intention with working with the Akashic Records, whether it's with a reading with somebody like myself or when you're working in your own Akashic Records, is really to provide you guidance in respect of any area of your life that you feel like you need guidance on. Now, we ask for questions when you come to a reading or when you're doing your own work in the Akashic Records, because this is a way for you to be able to really focus on the areas of your life in which you would like assistance on. Now, I know it can be really hard when someone says, "What questions do you have?" Your mind suddenly goes blank. But I have created a free resource which is over on my website, which is 101 questions that work really well in the Akashic Records. I've compiled this from obviously my work reading for other people and teaching others how to read. And you do not in any way, shape, or form have to only use those 101 questions. But my hope with that book is that it will give you an idea as to the types of things that you can ask and the type of topics that you can cover. I always want people, when they start working with the Akashic Records, to have the best, most in-depth experience that they can possibly have that really gives them the guidance to help them move forward in their own life. General guidance in respect of questions is if your question starts with a how, a what, or a why, you're going to be able to ask the Akashic Records that question. When questions do not work in the Akashic Records, because they are fifth dimensional and above, so they exist outside the concept of time. In a past life regression session, you are put into a state of hypnosis by the practitioner. And past life regression sessions can be really interesting and really helpful and very healing in certain cases. But in an Akashic Records reading, you are not going to be put into any sort of trance state or any hypnotic state. When you come for a reading with somebody like myself, you are going to sit with me on Zoom call. I am going to open up your Akashic Records in front of you. You may feel that connection. Lots of people will describe it as a feeling of warmth or energetic expansion in the heart chakra area. And then you're going to ask questions. I'm going to channel the guidance through for you from your guide team in the Akashic Records. Undoubtedly, the most popular question I get asked about in the Akashic Records, or that people ask when they start to learn, is what is my soul purpose? What is my mission? Why did I choose to come here to Earth at this time? And that's a great question because it really opens up the records to really dive into the process of you choosing the incarnation and really understanding perhaps why you've been through certain difficulties, why you've had certain experiences, and how to use those in a constructive way to move forward to help the collective. I also really want to emphasize the fact that everybody has the right and the ability to access their own Akashic Records. There is this common misconception that to be able to access the Akashic Records, you have to be, I have heard the term spiritually elite referred to. Now, I don't know what spiritually elite is meant to mean, but it is very much a case that if you have found the Akashic Records, if you're curious about the Akashic Records, you're ready to access your Akashic Records. The Akashic Records don't come into your realm of consciousness until you're ready to start working with them. So please do not think to yourself, oh, but I have all of this healing I need to do. I haven't meditated for a few weeks or any of these things. I'm not going to be able to do it. It is your birthright to be able to access your own Akashic Records. Does that mean that everybody then goes on to become an Akashic Records reader? No, because becoming an Akashic Records reader is a calling. And for some of you, you will feel called to train up and read the records for other people. But for others, you will just be wanting to work with your Akashic records for yourself. I don't ever want anyone to think that they are not good enough to access their own Akashic records. You all absolutely are. Does doing your healing work and integrating your shadow and working through inner child's work help? Absolutely. The more healing work that you do on yourself, the more you release certain programs and conditions, the higher the level of consciousness that you are operating from, and therefore the easier it is to access the Akashic records. And of course, the deeper into the Akashic records that you are able to go. So, of course, it's going to help, but it doesn't mean that you put off accessing your Akashic records until such time as you feel like, okay, well, now I'm healed, now I'm all good. Because I can promise you, as someone who has been on the spiritual journey for a very long time, you're going to constantly be revisiting certain aspects of your healing journey. That's normal, that's healthy, and that's the way that healing works. The healing process is a cycle. And if you are coming up against topics and emotions and situations that you feel like you have already dealt with, it's actually a really good sign, because what it means is that you are revisiting something, you're going deeper into the original wounding. It does not mean that you didn't do it right the first time around. It just means that you're accessing another level of the wounding to let go of. So I hope this first episode of this new podcast has been a good little introduction for you about what the Akashic records are and what they are not. Over the course of the next few episodes, I'm going to cover some different terms that we use in the Akashic records. We're going to talk about the different guides in the Akashic records. And of course, I'm going to start touching on some deeper esoteric truths. But for today, I would like to thank you all for your time. If you would like to connect with me on social media, I am most active over on Instagram, and my handle is at Akashic Readings and Healing. I will pop it into the show notes. I will also pop into the show notes my website, so if you want to go ahead and download yourself a copy of that free ebook and start looking at the types of questions you can ask your Akashic records, please feel free to do so. I will see you all next week.